Shabbat. We are continuing with our look at the Torah portion. It's Shabbat, so we must in fact look at the Torah. We are this week going to briefly talk about the Torah portion, Mishpatim. Mishpatim, which is judgment. Judgment, which is Exodus 21, verse 1, all the way up to 24, verse 18. Exodus 21, verse 1, all the way to 24, verse 18. The Torah portion, Mishpatim, judgment, is interesting collection of scripture where when we look at the verses that precede after the Ten Commandments, after the Ten Commandments was given, the Most High gives to Moses kind of a barrage of verses and laws, statutes, and commandments, judgments, kind of all in a row. So we have like a little batch of verses where the Most High, through the prophet Moses, gives us these various laws and, in this case, judgments. So we can look, go to Exodus 21, and verse 1, where it says there, these are the judgments. Don't look at that word there, judgments. We'll read from a little later, next chapter, but I just want to talk about judgments for a moment. And pull that up, put that on the this right there. The scriptures version says right ruling, but that word there is judgment. So pull that up there, 49, 41. Look at that there, Mishpat. 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 There is judgment. Judgments, Mishpatim. The word literally means a verdict, whether it be favorable or unfavorable, pronounced judicious, especially a sentence or formal decree. So when you talk about judgment, judgment is really what happens if you do this. If you do this, this is what's going to happen, and this is what's going to happen is the judgment. If you keep on acting up and not sitting where you're supposed to be sitting at, something bad is going to happen to you. Motion. You see? So something bad is going to happen to you, that's the judgment. And so that's the verdict. Right, you were given a particular law, a command, right? And then as a result of that, a verdict comes down. So when we look at this word mishpat, that's what that is. It's a verdict. So mishpat is, if you look, click on that 8199. 8199, that's the root of mishpat, which is shafat. Shafat, to judge, right? To judge, to pronounce a sentence. Okay, so in these verses here, in these chapters, really, you see a various right rulings, things that you should do a particular way that you should actually do those things. So what we're going to look at this week briefly is Exodus 22. Exodus 22, starting with the 20th verse, and we'll read all the way down to the 24th verse. Exodus 22, 20 through 24.
Exodus 22, 20. He who slaughters to an Elohim, except to Yahweh only, is put under the ban. Do not tread down a sojourner or oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land of Mizraim. Do not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If you do afflict them at all, if they cry out to me at all, I shall certainly hear their cry, and my wrath shall burn, and I shall kill you with the sword. Your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless.
Okay, very good. So we're looking at here these Mishpatim, these judgments. And so it's interesting that we have a command that goes, and then there's a judgment that goes with it, right? We start off with verse 20. He sacrificed to any god. What's that word there? I'm interested to know if it's Elohim or if it's El there. If you verse 20, he that sacrificed unto any god. What is it? What is it? Oh yeah, that is. Okay, very good. Sometimes you'll find with these translations, they'll sometimes translate a word that means like idle or worthless thing. I wasn't sure if this is one of those, but notice that the translators make it a lowercase God because they're not referring to the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're referring to any worthless thing that you decide to sacrifice unto other than the Most High. The judgment is that person shall be utterly destroyed. I really wanted to concentrate on 21, 22, 23, and 24. Was the addition. But we still see the example of judgments there. But when we look at 21 through 24, it's interesting that we see this here in terms of our actions, those of us that follow after the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our actions as Israel. Thou shalt not vex a stranger, nor oppress him. Why? Because you was a stranger in the land of Egypt, right? So we have that part there, but there's no judgment there. And this is the judgments. So we can probably lump these things together over here. Right? When you look at the next verses, it talks about you shall not afflict any widow or a fatherless child, an orphan. And then now comes the judgment, right? It's interesting that when you look at this, these are just random, I think, random widow, fatherless child. It don't necessarily say Israelitish widow or fatherless child. They would have to know about the Most High, I would think, in order to cry out to him, because they do say that they'll cry out unto me, and they'll hear them. This is causing me to think about who he's actually targeting. Is he narrowing it down to only specific widows and fatherless children? Why does he have to say they'll cry out to me and I'll surely hear them. Seems like he hears his people when they cry out to him. Does he have to add that in because he's talking about particular people who wouldn't necessarily by default be able to cry out and he hear them? I don't know. That's just something I was just thinking. But the point is that when he does in fact hear them, he's going to actually, it says here, kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be with him. So if you decide, yes, that's the judgment. If you decide that you want to, oh my goodness, and your children will be fathered. Right? So if you decide to treat a widow in a particular way, the judgment is that the Most High is going to cause your wife to deal with it. Right? If you decide that you're going to treat orphans in a particular way, then the Most High is going to cause your children to actually be, in fact, orphans. When you think about Yeshua, when he speaks about the idea of reaping what you sow, this is reaping what you sow right here. The level of which you judge, so shall you be judged. Right? That's what we see right over here. Right? Judge not, lest you be judged with that very same judgment. Right? That's what Yeshua said. But this is basically saying the exact same thing. It's interesting when we think about the Most High and his care for the widows and the fatherless children, those that don't have a husband, father. It's so interesting that there's so many. Somebody gotta find out how many times the Most High talks about the widow and the fatherless child in the Torah. I wonder what the count is on that. How many times the Most High talks about the widow and the fatherless child? When we think about here, let's go to one of my favorite verses. This is one of my favorite verses, just in case you didn't know. Let me tell you. Deuteronomy 10, 17 and 18. Let's look at that.
For Yahweh your Elohim is Elohim of mighty ones and master of masters, the great El, mighty and awesome, who shows no partiality nor takes a bribe. He executes right ruling for the fatherless and the widow, and loves the stranger, giving him food and a garment.
Okay, very good. So we have to understand that when the Most High does these, when he does 18, he's not raining down food and clothes out of the sky. It's not like manna. He's not talking about manna here, right? He's talking about people doing these things, right? He's talking about his people doing these things, okay? And so even when we think about what we looked at in Exodus 22 and 24, the Most High isn't dropping down rains of wars out of the sky either. Right? He's going to send somebody by your way, and they're going to kill you with a sword, right? And so when we think about these various commands and these various judgments that go along with these various commands, it's helping us to not only see the character of the Most High, but what that character looks like when it's manifest through his people. I think that we see this idea of caring for the widow and the fatherless child so many times because it's kind of a clear picture of what the character of the Almighty looks like. And he wants for us, when he gives us all these laws, statutes, and commands and judgments, he wants for us to be, in fact, walking around in his character, manifesting and exhibiting that character to one another. If we say that we are a follower of the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we find ourselves afflicting the widow and the fatherless child, we are in fact a lie. You're a lie. And so when we look at the places where we see that the Most High is calling for the heads of those that do these abominable things, I don't know what the difference is really when you think about a person who is physically dead or somebody who in the eyes of the Most High is dead. Right? If you have no connection with the Almighty, if you have no connection with life, I mean, what's the point really of your walking around life? It's pointless, right? So when we think about the idea of here from a nation standpoint, what was supposed to happen to those who did this or that to those that the Most High regarded as precious. Now that we're dealing in a time where we don't have this nation situation, but again, these laws and judgments, these judgments are helping us understand the character of the Most High. And so if his character stays the same and people are behaving in a way that he lined out in his word that he despises, in fact, those things that those people do causes for the wrath. And it's another thing, another list that if you wanted to look up, how many times in the Torah does the Most High talk about his wrath, his wax hot wrath being poured out on people? That list might not be as long as the widow and the fatherless list, but it's interesting the things that you will find associated with his wax wrath being poured out on people. Spoiler alert, one of those times is the golden calf situation. Okay, so as much as and it's interesting if you think about the placement of these commands. Verse 20 is idolatry, and then right behind it is oppressing those that don't have a covering over them. Right? And so even if we would just think about the fact that the Most High put these two things together, and then the judgment of the one is this other example of the Most High being so mad that he speaks about his wrath in this particular way, like he's really, really mad about it. I think might mean something, but I think what we want to be able to gain from all of this is the fact that it's easy really to say what you are or who you are or what it is that you believe in, but the Most High, through his law, statutes, and commands, has given us a particular standard of righteousness that actually defines what his people look like. And the proof, as they say, is in the proverbial. I was going to say proverbial pudding because it's not real pudding. Okay, does anybody have any thoughts, questions, or comments about Mishpatim?